Hey, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is Where Are They Now?, where I take a look at the games I reviewed last May of 2022, and see how my opinion has changed on them. This is another month with not a lot of changes, but as usual, timestamps down below so you can go ahead and check out whatever section you want, or just get a quick recap of, 15 or so reviews and ratings in 8 minutes. It's not going to be 8 minutes, 12 minutes. With that, let's go ahead and start off with the section of the games I have not played. Usually these are either prototypes, or alternatively games that I reviewed and didn't care enough to continue playing them, starting off with Keresis, which I think for me Keresis is both. Keresis was a Kickstarter that had a kind of a dungeon crawling, it's sort of dungeon crawling experience, but with a little bit of a Euro mechanic, almost like Labyrinth, but not Labyrinth. It was an interesting game that wasn't bad, but also was a little bit too much of a hodgepodge of different things without a sense of cohesion that really tied me and invested me in the game. I gave that one a 3 out of 5. I had fun with it, but not like, it's a game I don't need to play again, and I'm fine with that. Then we have Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, which is an interesting one. I gave that a 3.5. Some elements of the game were strong 4. Like, the card play was very tactically rewarding, but I think that I can get that card play out of different game systems. So a good example would be Sky Tier Horde. Gives me a very similar puzzly card play system, and I like that kind of how do I affect and how do I manipulate a card row to take down the various enemies along the way. Very compelling in that sense. But the rest of the game, I didn't feel the need for the miniatures were there, which I know for me is crazy, and I felt that the board it wasn't overly rewarding, so it was a lot of cost, production, space, miniatures, all these things, all for a card system that was really good, but didn't justify the rest of it, so a 3.5 out of 5. We have the Artemis Project and expansion. The Artemis Project base game I gave a 3.5, and the expansion bumped it up to a 4 for me. This is one where I do want to play it when it comes in. It's one that I did back, and I'm hoping and expecting hoping to dive back in with the expansion. I really enjoyed it with the expansion. With the base game alone, I thought it was fine, but not amazing. It's a dice placement puzzle, and there's lots of those out there, from Alien Frontiers to Castle of Burgundy, Bora Bora, dozens and dozens of dice placement games out there. The expansion did elevate it. It had these satellites to go around the board. That was my favorite part of it, along with a few other modules. We have QE Commodities. This is one that is an expansion for QE. QE I give a 4 to 5 with the caveat that it's just a crazy broken game, like genuinely broken. If my goal is to win at QE, I can do so. Not even a question, I can do so, I can guarantee it, unless I'm playing with players who know the exact same thing, but even then, QE is fun though. It's a ton of fun. It's just a crazy, ridiculous game that is almost a party game in the experience with just enough strategy to mix it in. As long as players are not trying to break it, it works. That said, the expansion, QE Commodities, sought to balance the game so that it wasn't really broken, and it did so effectively, but by doing so, at least in my opinion, and I think it's actually pretty well liked, but for me, QE Commodities, QE the base game is a 4, and QE Commodities is a 3.5 out of 5. It almost took down the experience a bit, in the sense that it added some elements that I don't mind, but they added complexity to the rules and kind of took away from the level of brokenness and insane fun the game has, thus making it just another auction game as opposed to the crazy experience it is. So for me, QE Commodities is one that I probably wouldn't play with when playing with QE. Union Stockyards is another one that's a 3.5 out of 5. A very heavy game that was very dry on theme and presentation. I think that took me out of the experience a bit. I find with a good Euro game, you kind of, I don't know, I think it depends, because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking Splotter games are very dry in presentation and I love them, but I guess Splotter games are good enough. I think that Union Stockyards was fun. It gave me a compelling puzzle as you try to manage your stockyard, a little polygon game of trying to connect to the meat yards and all these things. Overall enjoyed it, but again, 3.5 out of 5. Not a game I'm going to pick when I'm faced with a lot of other heavier Euro games. We have Bark Avenue. Gave that a 3 out of 5. That was another Kickstarter that it was definitely a lighter game, but also was pick up and deliver, which isn't my go-to mechanic. It's one of those mechanics that usually doesn't work as well for me, with some exceptions like Zia. Zia is going to be one that I do like. Zaya is going to be one that I like a bit more in terms of that. But overall, Bark Avenue was cute. It was appealing, very dog-based, obviously, and if you have dogs, I think that's another reason to go ahead and jump for it. But for me, it was a 3 out of 5, a little on the light side with pick up and deliver. We have Sniper Elite. That was a good one. Sniper Elite is a 4 out of 5. I happen to have not played this one because between Mind Management and Beast, I already have like a bunch of hidden movement games that have entered my collection this past year, and those two, Beast and Mind Management, have kind of become my go-tos. Versus Sniper Elite is one that I really enjoyed. I'm always happy to play, but it's just a notch below those two in terms of my overall enjoyment. So a 4 to 5, great game, easy recommendation, but I'm going to pick the other two over it. We have Guild of Merchant Explorers, a kind of roll-and-write game that was not really a roll-and-write game. This is a 3.5 out of 5. Guild of Merchant Explorers was definitely enjoyable, lots of fun to go through, but in a game in a world where I'm kind of comparing it to roll and write games. Ultimately, I felt it was my main complaint was that there's kind of this pick up and tear down aspect to it. You're like expanding, and then crushing it all down across 4 rounds of play. There were elements of it that were very enjoyable, particularly those cool cards you got every single round, but overall, the expansion and condension aspect, I think I rather roll and writes that just let me expand and just let me trigger growing and cascading bonuses, as opposed to Guild Merchants Explorers, which kind of forced you to condense in between rounds. We have Batman Everybody Lies. I gave that a 2.5 out of 5. Batman Everybody Lies is, and that's an interesting, I didn't actually give my rating on camera for that one, because I was very torn. And this is a problem I faced in general sometimes when I wonder if something that I'm reviewing is my genre. And then I'm always a little hesitant on, like, do I give a rating for something that I haven't, like I've had this happen a few times, where a specific version or type of game is like so off for me and others are enjoying it that I'm like, I just don't think I'm the target audience. But even then, like, I don't know. I've had the issue a few times. I rarely don't give ratings, but this is one of those times where I didn't give a rating in the video. I did make it clear it wasn't for me. I said, like, this is not for me, but I just don't think it's my genre. But it's a mystery game with the biggest issue I have with it is kind of the same issue you'd have with Detective or any of these other mystery games, which is I was kind of forced between writing down a ton of information to try to process everything as I go, or just not caring enough to double down into every single thing that I can go. So I can either do a ton of detective work. I don't know. I think unlock games and extra games do it better for me. And even within the detective genre, there are some games like Suspects, which I think did do a good balance of not forcing you down, like the writing down absolutely everything to try to track everything down. So it kind of felt like to play the game well, I had to engage in homework, and that wasn't really my jam. And then lastly, in the section of games I have not played, we have Western Legends. Gave that a 3.5 out of 5. I really like some of the things that Western Legends is doing, but also it just drags too long for the experience I got out of it, and it didn't work as well at lower player counts. This is actually a problem that is kind of solved to a certain extent by Forsaken. Forsaken at a 2-player game, at a 2-player experience with Forsaken, I really enjoy Forsaken. At 3 players, I don't. I will not play Forsaken I shouldn't say will not. I am reluctant to play Forsaken at 3+ players, versus at 2, I'm very happy to dive into it, and I plan on diving into the solo mode on that as well. Although when I did this review, I had not played Forsaken yet, but that's where I was with these games. Then we have, for games that stay the same. Reviews that stay the same, we have like 5 or 6 over here. We have Root Marauder. That's going to be the expansion to Root. I really enjoy Root. I still enjoy Root. I have been playing with various factions from Marauder. I haven't actually played with the hirelings that much since I dove into this. I just find that I tried to pull out Root at higher player counts and haven't felt the need to pull out the hirelings. But the overall new factions, played with those a bunch, and still enjoy Root Marauder. Still a 4.5 out of 5 within the Root system. We have Planet Unknown over here. This is one that I really enjoy. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I find that the actual gameplay itself is not as, let's say, as deep as Foundations of Rome or as obviously accessible as Baron Park. Actually is accessible as Baron Park. I don't know. I think that Planet Unknown is a lot of fun. And I love the fact that you can play up to 6 players simultaneously. I love the variation in corporations and planets you have and the way they combine. But there are other elements that don't elevate it enough for me. Like, this is a game with an expansion. Depending on the expansion and what it did, could easily become a 4.5 just because how good everything else is. As it stands, it's a little mechanically light for what I'm looking for, but it's just so rewarding and engaging. It's still a 4 out of 5. Then we have Great Plains over here. Great Plains is a 2-player area control game that has a bite to it. I really enjoy this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5 as well. Great Plains is one that I still keep diving into this one. It's one of my regular go-tos when I have another player at the table and 25 minutes, and I want to go through a punchy, mean, I take that, you take that, let's see who can get the area control done in this game. Really enjoy that one. We have Burncycle. This is an interesting one. Burncycle is one of my weird reviews where I gave it like multiple ratings. I basically said, hey, I'm really strongly saying the rating based on player count. At 3 players, it's a 3.5. At 2 players, it's a 4, and as a solo game, it's a 4.5 for me. And that holds up. I haven't played the 3 players since because it's less fun for me, but I've played it at 2 and 1, and I enjoyed this game most solo. I find that that's why it really gives me the best experience. I'm always happy to play it at 2 because there is that sense of, like, you know, collaboration with another player, and I do like having another player at the table. And I'm also always happy to share Burncycle, especially as it's one of Chip Theory's less as well received games. I shouldn't say as well received, less popular games. I think a lot of people have rated this game very, very highly, but it has had less appeal compared to the other games. But I really enjoyed Burncycle. It's a lot of fun robot madness going on in this kind of not stealth, but not really stealth-based game. Much more about the manipulation and sequencing of things, and a ton of variety to the various scenarios you go through. Burncycle is just really, really solid. And then lastly, we have Foundations of Rome at a 4.5 out of 5. And again, no rating change here. Foundations of Rome continues to be accessible. I've continued to dive into the various expansions and all that stuff. I think I think I have not played yet with the bartering expansion, or have I? There's one expansion or module I haven't played with, but the rest of it I've just played with it all and enjoy the game. It's just a lot of fun. It's not a perfect game. It's definitely an expensive game, but I really enjoy the experience, and I just think, I mean, lots of people are liking and enjoying this one, and I understand completely why. And then for the reviews have changed, again, as usual, this does not necessarily mean a number has changed. Sometimes there's just a little bit of a conversation around what happened, the game left, something, this, that, the other. Only 4 in this category. We have Tenpenny Parks, which I gave a 4 out of 5, and it left. Nothing wrong with Tenpenny Parks. I like it. I just find that, and arguably I should reduce this to a 3.5. Yeah, I think I'm going to reduce it to a 3.5. Just thinking where it is in comparison with other games. I like Tenpenny Parks, and it has possibly some of the best artwork and presentation from the polyomino genre. If I'm comparing it to games like Planet Unknown, to Baron Park, to Foundations of Rome, well, Foundations of Rome has its own production. But in terms of the art and just component quality of Tenpenny Parks, top notch. The gameplay was also very fun, but I think I enjoy the gameplay a drop less in comparison to these other games, to the point that I think I'm going to knock it to a 3.5 down from a 4. But compared to Baron Park, compared to Planet Unknown, compared to the Foundations of Rome, it was just a good month for polyomino games, and Tenpenny Parks ultimately did not make the cut. It did eventually leave my collection, which I kind of expected when I reviewed it. When I reviewed it, I was like, I like it, but also the comparison within the genre is a tough one. We have Tiny Epic Dungeons, knocking that down from a 3.5 to a 3. I like Tiny Epic Dungeons. That's not true. Sorry. I played Tiny Epic Dungeons, and when I'm thinking about it overall, and this one, I actually have not played it since, but when I think through my ratings, part of the big distinguishing between a 3.5 and a 3 is a 3.5 is a game that I kind of have a twinge. I almost want to play. I wish I had more time to play. Again, Tenpenny Parks. I wish I had more time to play games so I could play Tenpenny Parks in addition to the rest. Versus Tiny Epic Dungeons, I don't care if I never play that game again, which I had a good time with it. It was fine, but I don't care if I never play it again, and that's a 3 to me. So small, just rating clarification as opposed to anything else. Then we have Bytes and Expansion. That's a 3.5, been a 3.5 for a while. The expansion just gives you more variety to the content. Didn't enhance the gameplay, didn't make the gameplay worse, just gave you more variety. Ultimately, that one did leave my collection finally. It's one that I went back and forth on and tried to hold on to, because I really do like Bytes, and I find it a casual, fun time that is family accessible and gamer accessible, and just, I enjoy it. I also find I really don't pull it off the shelf. I try to. I want to play it more. I do like it. I do recommend it. But it's that 3.5 category for me. It's definitely not a chance of going to a 3. I like it too much. But it doesn't get played, and it's hard. I don't know. It just doesn't get played or pulled out. Eventually, it finally did leave. And then lastly, we have Merlin and Merlin Big Box. This is a 4 out of 5, and it left my collection. And that's just because it's a really good game. It's a Stefan Feld game, but the game thrives the most when you're playing it with the expansion content. When you're mixing in a bunch of expansions and modules, that's when the game is best. And the only problem with that is a game is already a beast to teach just because of how much iconography there is. And when you try to add an expansion and modules, the amount of stuff to teach the game means I'm kind of looking at an experience that's, you know, akin to some other Stefan Feld experiences I like Bruges or Castle Burgundy or Bora Bora, but with twice the teaching time. Not twice the teaching complexity, just twice the teaching time as you teach everyone a million different symbols. And so I really like Merlin. Arguably, it'd be a higher rating if it wasn't for that barrier to entry. As it is, I enjoy it. I am always happy to play it, but I just am not going to pull it out and teach in comparison to other games that do the same thing. And so ultimately it did leave my collection. And that's what we have for the month of May. A bunch of games, not a ton of changes. Lots of these games I've not played again. Lots of these games have stayed the same, and a handful have some small adjustments to them. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.